It was supposed to be a simple 30th birthday. Dinner, a few close friends, cake, and maybe a few too many stories about my awkward teenage years. But when Mom handed me the small wrapped box, her hands trembled. "This was your father's idea," she said softly. "He wanted you to have it today. My father had died 2 years ago. Heart attack. Sudden." So the gift already felt like a ghost wrapped in paper. I tore off the silver paper and froze. Inside was a VHS tape, labeled in black marker. "For Emily on your 30th. No date. No explanation." "Dad recorded that years ago," Mom said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "He said it was important. We didn't even have a working VCR." So later that night, I drove to the attic and dug through boxes until I found the old player, still tangled in cables and dust. At midnight, I finally pressed play. The screen flickered to life. My father appeared, younger, nervous, sitting at his desk. "Hey, Emmy," he said with a shaky smile. "If you're watching this, it means you're old enough now. And I owe you the truth." He glanced off camera. "Your mom's not going to like that I did this. But I can't let you keep living with a lie." He leaned closer. "You need to know what really happened the day you were born." The tape crackled, and my mother's voice shouted from off-screen, "Tom, don't you dare tell her." Then it cut to black. The static hummed in the dark room long after the screen went black. I sat frozen, the glow from the paused frame still faintly illuminating my father's face, a face caught between fear and guilt. I rewound the tape a few seconds, hoping it was just damaged, that maybe I'd missed something. But no, it ended exactly where my mother's voice cut through the room like a knife. "Tom, don't you dare tell her." The words didn't sound like anger. They sounded like panic. I stared at the screen, heart hammering. "What truth?" I whispered. "What happened the day I was born?" Downstairs, the clock struck midnight, 30 years old. The exact age he'd chosen. I tried calling my mom. No answer. The second time, it rang once before she hung up. That told me everything. The next morning, I drove to her house. The blinds were half drawn. She opened the door before I even knocked. "You watched it," she said flatly. Not a question. "Dad said he owed me the truth," I said. "What was he talking about?" Her expression crumbled for a split second before she hid it behind composure. "He was sick," she murmured. "He didn't know what he was saying." I stepped past her into the living room, the same one that never changed, where every photo of my childhood smiled down from the walls. There was one picture I'd always loved: Mom, Dad, and baby me in the hospital. But as I looked closer this time, something felt off. Mom's hospital bracelet said baby, girl Johnson. Our last name isn't Johnson. And suddenly, the air in the room felt too thin to breathe.
I stared at that photo until the world around it blurred. The name on the hospital bracelet, Girl Johnson, burned into my mind like a word I was never meant to see. "That's not our name," I said quietly. My mother didn't answer. Her knuckles whitened on the armrest of her chair. "Emily, please. Your father, he didn't mean to confuse you." "Confuse me?" I turned to face her fully. "He said I was living a lie, Mom." He looked terrified. She flinched at that. The silence that followed was suffocating, stretched so thin it could snap. Then, finally, her voice cracked through it. "You weren't supposed to find out this way." My heart dropped. "Find out what?" She covered her face with both hands. For a moment, she didn't look like the woman who raised me. She looked like someone drowning. "You weren't born that day," she whispered. "You were brought to us." I felt my legs go weak. "What do you mean, brought?" "There was another family," she said slowly. "The Johnsons. I was in the same hospital that night. We lost our baby, stillborn." "And your father?" Her voice broke. I already knew the rest. "He took me," I said. Mom's eyes filled. "He thought we could save you both," she whispered. "He said they didn't deserve to raise a child after what they'd done." I stepped back, shaking. "You kidnapped me." Her silence was the same as confession. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed my father's face on that flickering tape, the way he said, "I owe you the truth." But now I realized, he didn't record that to confess to me. He recorded it to protect me from her.
The next morning, I couldn't stay in that house. Every wall felt dishonest, every photograph staged. I dug through old paperwork, adoption records, my birth certificate, anything that might tell me where I came from. But everything was forged clean, neatly rewritten like the past could be edited. Except for one piece of paper, a discharge form, water-stained and tucked behind my vaccination records. The attending doctor's signature read, Dr. M. Keller, Lakeview Hospital. The same hospital printed on that photo. I typed Lakeview Hospital Johnson Family 1993 into a search bar. One result popped up, a local news article from that year. Newborn girl disappears from Lakeview Hospital. Parents plead for answers. The attached photo hit me like a punch. The woman in it was younger, exhausted, crying into her husband's shoulder. And she had my face. Or rather, I had hers. My stomach turned. My hands went cold. I grabbed my keys and drove. The hospital was long abandoned, its windows boarded, but I found an address in the article, Ellen and Mark Johnson, 1420 Ridgeview. When I pulled up to the house, an older woman was tending flowers in the yard. She looked up. Stopped. Her hands fell to her sides. Ellen Johnson? I asked, voice shaking. She didn't answer. She just whispered, Emily. And I swear, it sounded like a mother saying her child's name for the first time in 30 years. Ellen's hands trembled as she reached for my face. You're real, she said, barely breathing. They told us you were gone. That you died. I'm sorry, I whispered. I didn't know. I only found out yesterday. She led me inside. The house smelled like cinnamon and old books. On the wall was a faded photo of a baby, same gray eyes, same small scar above the brow I'd always wondered about. I fell asleep that night, she said, voice trembling. They told me you were safe in the nursery. Then the alarms went off. By the time I got there, the window was open and you were gone. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat. My father, he worked near that hospital. He must have seen you that night. Ellen nodded slowly. The police said a man in a paramedic jacket was seen leaving with a blanket. They thought it was panic, a nurse trying to save babies from the fire. There was no fire, I said softly. No, she agreed. There never was. She showed me a small room at the end of the hall, pink wallpaper, still untouched after 30 years. I couldn't change it, she whispered. It was the only place I could still feel you. I turned to her. Why didn't they ever find you? She hesitated. Because we stopped looking, she said. Someone threatened us. Her hands shook. Your father sent a letter. Ellen handed me a small, crumpled envelope from a drawer. The handwriting was unmistakable, my father's. It wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to them. I unfolded it with shaking fingers. You don't deserve her. You almost killed her. I'm taking her somewhere safe. Don't come looking, she has a better chance this way. It was dated the day after I was born. My head spun. He thought he was saving me, I said, almost to myself. Ellen's eyes darkened. Saving you from what? I didn't have an answer, but I had one place left to look. I drove straight back to Mom's house. She was sitting on the porch, as if she'd been waiting. I want to see them, I said. The Johnsons. Her face went pale. You shouldn't have done that. They're my parents. They're not, she snapped loud, desperate. You think he was a saint? You think he saved you? He took you from them because of what they did. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? She looked at me hollow, defeated. They didn't lose you in a hospital accident. You were part of a trial, an experiment. They used infants for a research project your father was investigating. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. That's impossible. But her eyes said it wasn't. Mom didn't speak for a while. Her fingers trembled as she walked down the hallway toward Dad's study, the one room I'd never been allowed to enter as a kid. He kept everything, she murmured. Every record, every letter. I told him to burn them. He couldn't. She unlocked the drawer at the bottom of his desk. The metal creaked, slow and reluctant, like it knew what was inside shouldn't see daylight again. Inside were files, dozens of them, wrapped in brown string. Each stamped confidential, Lakeview Research Institute. My chest tightened. He really worked there? She nodded. Before you were born, or before he found you. He volunteered as an EMT for their neonatal program. Said they were testing a new respiratory treatment for premature infants. It was supposed to save lives. She pulled out a file labeled Trial 9B. Inside were black and white photos, infants hooked to machines, nurses standing beside them, smiles that didn't reach their eyes. My stomach turned. I flipped through page after page until I found one marked Subject 41J, Transfer Request. It listed my supposed birth date. And under condition, it read, Severe respiratory distress, predicted non-survival. Below that, a note scrawled in blue pen. Removed from facility without authorization. Believed deceased. I looked up at her, voice shaking. He didn't kidnap me. She nodded. He saved you. He couldn't stand by while they tested on dying babies. He told me he carried you out under a hospital blanket, said you were barely breathing. He thought, if he could raise you as ours, no one would ever find you. Tears blurred my vision. So all this time, he wasn't hiding me from the Johnsons. Mom whispered. He was hiding you from the people who built the experiment that almost killed you. The words sank into me like ice. My father, my rescuer, my kidnapper, my savior, all three at once. I wanted to hate him, but grief doesn't work like that. It folds itself around the truth until you can't tell what's mercy and what's betrayal. While Mom sifted through the papers, I noticed something at the bottom of the drawer, another VHS tape. No label. Just dust. I picked it up slowly. What's this? Mom looked at it and closed her eyes. He recorded that a week before he died. I couldn't watch it. We sat in silence as the tape spun inside the old VCR. The screen flickered to life. Dad appeared again, older now, thinner, his voice rasping like he'd carried this secret too long. Emmy. I guess I never got the chance to explain in person. He smiled faintly, though his eyes were hollow. You've probably learned by now that I took you from that hospital. You need to know why. They called it Project Renewal. A trial to test a respiratory serum on newborns. Most of the babies didn't survive. You did, but only barely. The Johnsons were victims too. They were told you died so the hospital could erase their mistake. He coughed, breath shallow. I thought I was doing the right thing, giving you a real life. But no one should grow up inside a lie. I hope, someday, you'll see both sides. Love and fear can wear the same face. He paused, then whispered. There's a bank box in my name. It holds everything they didn't want you to see. Give it to the Johnsons. End it, Emmy. The screen went black. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. He wanted you to set things right. And for the first time since pressing play, I realized something. This wasn't just my father's confession. It was his final request. The next morning, I drove to the address my father mentioned, a small bank downtown, the kind that still smelled like paper and time. When I gave them the key, the clerk hesitated. This box hasn't been opened in over 20 years, she said quietly. Are you sure? I nodded. My hand barely stopped shaking. Inside was a single manila folder, a cassette recorder, and a sealed envelope marked for Ellen and Mark Johnson. I didn't open it. It wasn't mine to read. But I pressed play on the recorder. My father's voice crackled through, softer now, like the sound of someone forgiving themselves in real time. To the Johnsons, if this ever finds you, I want you to know the truth. I didn't take your daughter to punish you. I took her because the hospital lied. She wasn't dead, she was dying. I had the serum formula. I used it on her myself, and it worked. But I couldn't bring her back without exposing everything. I chose her life over my freedom. I'm sorry. The tape clicked off. When I brought the envelope to Ellen, she didn't cry right away. She held it to her chest like a heartbeat she'd been missing all her life. She looked at me through tears. You have no idea what this means. I smiled, though my own throat was tight. Maybe I do. That night, I stood by my father's grave, the wind cold and forgiving. You did the wrong thing, I whispered. But maybe for the right reason. I placed the old tape beside his headstone, the first one and the last one, side by side. The beginning and the end. For years, I thought I was a lie wrapped in love. But standing there, I finally understood. Sometimes family isn't who gives you life. It's who fights for it. And for the first time, I didn't need another truth. I just needed peace.